So ever since Piccolo jobbed in episode 34 of Super, people have been freaking out, talking about, like, is Piccolo just completely buried? He got totally fucked over. He's never going to be relevant again. And to that, I have to ask, well, when was the last time Piccolo was ever actually relevant? You know, people might argue it's like, well, he was relevant throughout all of Dragon Ball Z. Some people might argue it's like, well, he wasn't that relevant in the Buu arc. All he really did was just kind of, you know, monitor Goten and Trunks, teach them the fusion, that's about it. And, you know, be fusion fodder for Buu. So, you know, then you have to look back at the previous arcs. Well, how, you know, like, how important was he then? It's like, oh, he did really important things. He was all over those arcs, being a competent fighter. But is being a competent fighter actually being useful? I mean, you think of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all that, like, you know, being a competent fighter, of course, is important, but was he competent enough, or really, was he powerful enough to be relevant to those stories? I argue the last time Piccolo was ever, you know, relevant, you know, last time he was ever relevant, the last time he really made an impact on Toriyama's story is the Saiyan arc. The series pretends that he's still awesome and a badass, and he is. He's a totally awesome badass. But really, he becomes the Worf of Dragon Ball. The Worf being from Star Trek Next Generation, who was known as the big badass guy of that show. And he would get his ass kicked every time. He never really got to, you know, be the badass everyone said he is. He always got his ass kicked, so that way we knew how badass the new bad guys were. And that's really the role that Piccolo plays. Yamcha played it before him. Vegeta's filled in that role a few times. But really, Piccolo himself has just never, past the Saiyan arc, really doesn't get to be special or relevant in any meaningful way. He's there for arcs. He gets to fight big bad guys. But he never has a big impact on the story as a whole. And like I said, the Saiyan arc really is the last time he got to be meaningful. He died protecting Gohan. And really, like, that was really the end of his character arc. He had transitioned from evil, you know, evil reincarnation of Piccolo Daimao to, you know, having this blood feud against Goku, and training for 5 years just to kill him, having to team up with his arch nemesis, then having to train his son, to which he actually developed a true emotional bond with, and then sacrificed his life for. That was Piccolo's greatest moment. I mean, you guys maybe can argue he had some other really badass moments, but that was really like his best moment right there, just as a character, just everything culminating in that. Like, yeah, that's where his arc really comes to a close, and then everything after that is just, he's just kind of coasting on the development he had from that arc. So he doesn't really develop as a character past that point. He pretty much plateaus and just rides the rest of the series out as that character. So, what does he do after that? Well, you know, he's dead for a while, and he comes back. He fuses with Nail, and he fights Frieza. A lot of people argue he fought Frieza. Well, you know, that makes, you know, that, like, he fought Frieza, and that was relevant. Frieza was the big bad guy. He doesn't beat Frieza. In fact, he goes toe-to-toe with Frieza's second form. And what does Frieza do? He goes, this guy's giving me shit. Goes into his third form, and just pew 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 pew, and gets fucked up. He gets fucked up. Like, he doesn't contribute anything to the fight. Like, you know, he stalls Frieza. You can argue that. Like, you know, I've had plenty of people say, it's like, well, you know, if Piccolo hadn't shown up, you know, Gohan and Vegeta and all of them would have been dead. They never would have been able to, they never would have, you know, gotten that far, and Goku never would have been able to show up. But I argue that's not the case. Frieza's kind of an idiot in that arc, and Frieza's kind of an idiot in general. I don't know why he's considered such a great villain, but, you know, he spends that entire fight, like, just fucking around with people. You know, he fucks around, like, in his first form at first, and his second form. You know, he drags things out until Piccolo shows up, and he goes, this guy's giving me shit, and he goes to his third form. Then he goes to his final form, and he's just kind of like, you know, just very nonchalantly, just kind of, you know, picking people off, and just kind of fucking people up. And then Goku shows up, and then, you know, he fights Goku at 1%. then 50%, then 100%. Like, you know, it's just, he keeps having all these upgrades to his power. And he just keeps, you know, he just keeps holding back and holding back and holding back, and it's just, Frieza plays with his food. He draws things out. You could say he's stupid, or you could say he's sadistic. Doesn't really matter. He is the type of character to just drag that shit out. So Piccolo being there really doesn't change the story. I mean, he changes the story in the sense that he's there. He does things. He fuses with Nail to, you know, be on par with Frieza, but beyond that, he doesn't make any meaningful contribution. So there's the first thing. It's just, you know, the Frieza arc, he really isn't relevant. Whenever Frieza, you know, comes back after the Genki Dama, you know, blasts Piccolo, drops his ass, and he's gone for the rest of the arc. Then you get to the Artificial Human arc, and we have, you know, he fights 19. Nothing really happens. He doesn't defeat 19. 19 still gets away. I'm sorry, not 19, 20. He fights 20. You know, he lops his arm off. He gets away. And he still ends up activating 17 and 18, who activates 16. Nothing changes. So his contribution there was none. Then there's the next big thing that people say. It's like, oh, well, you know, Piccolo was important because he fused with God, and then after he fused with God, he was able to fight Cell. And he doesn't win that fight. Cell, you know, he's going they go toe-to-toe, they're fairly even. Cell's got the better regenerative power, so it'd be pretty damn difficult for Piccolo to actually kill him. And then, what was it? Was it Kuririn, I think, and Tenshinhan and Trunks show up? Or, I don't know. A bunch of them show up, and, you know, like, you know, then there's the Teoken, and he takes the fuck off, and they're like, well, shit. You know, so Piccolo drops the ball there. You know, they don't try to follow him. You know, they apparently can't follow him, even though he has like 10 people's key in him. You think that they would sense one of them, but, and, you know, they can't follow him. So Piccolo's contribution there, kind of non-existent. Really didn't matter at all. Like, you can argue that, well, he found out all that stuff about Cell that they wouldn't have known about had he not confronted Cell. Yeah, he got the info, but if he hadn't have confronted Cell, they would have gotten that info when the next person confronted Cell. As soon as someone confronted Cell, that information would have been dispensed to the audience. And really, knowing that he's some asshole from the future really doesn't help any. Like, it doesn't give us any kind of information. Yeah, like, they get to destroy the little baby Cell that's in the tube underneath Garo's lab. And honestly, who gives a shit? Because, I mean, in this type of timeline, by the time that Cell would have been fully developed, there would have been, what, 10 Z fighters to fuck his ass up as soon as he was born? Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered at all. So, you know, that doesn't matter either. So then we go back to, you know, Piccolo and that. So he doesn't contribute that. In fact, Piccolo makes things worse in that arc. Because he fuses with God, they're now no longer Dragon Balls. And for some reason, Piccolo can't create his own set of Dragon Balls. So there are no Dragon Balls. No Dragon Balls. Also, he fights 17. And a lot of people say, like, oh, well, it was really important. He fought 17. Well, fighting 17, the 17 doesn't have ki. Cell senses Piccolo's ki, and who else would Piccolo be fighting other than one of the artificial humans? So Cell goes there. Oh, look, he now knows where 17 and 18 are, and he absorbs them. I mean, you know, Vegeta also helped fuck that up. But really, if Piccolo had never fused with God, they'd still have a full set of Dragon Balls, and Imperfect Cell never would have found 17 and 18. So not only does he not really contribute, he also made that arc worse for everybody else. Because as I said, 17 and 18 probably never would have been found had it not been, or by Cell, had it not been for Piccolo. Because there would have been any key for him to sense. So yeah, there's that. Then you move on to the Majin Buu arc. Clearly he doesn't do anything there. He teaches the kids how to fuse. That's it. And he's fusion fodder for Buu, which is even worse for everybody. Yeah, it's a role that anybody could have filled. Teaching the kids how to fuse, I mean, could have done it. Hell, you could have had fucking Bulma teach them how to do the fusion dance. Anyone could have done that job. And that's the thing, like, Piccolo could have, if Piccolo had stayed dead after the Namek arc, or, I'm sorry, if he had stayed dead after the Saiyan arc, wouldn't have mattered. It really wouldn't have. He doesn't impact the story in any big, meaningful way after this. And it's a really good note to end his character on overall. And you can make the argument, and you can make a lot of arguments. I keep bringing up, but you can also make the argument. Well, without Piccolo, you don't have Dragon Balls. Grab a Namekian. You have a whole planet of them. Fuck it. Go to Namek, pick up a Namekian. Hey, you're the new god. Make us some new Dragon Balls, which is what they ended up doing anyhow. Hey, Dende, want to go live on Earth? Make us some Dragon Balls. So, there you go. Right there, not meaningful. Not important. And then in Super, it's the same thing. He doesn't really contribute. He doesn't do jack shit in the Beerus arc, the Golden Frieza arc. He fucking dies. And you can kind of make the argument that if it wasn't for that, they would have been able to, like, Gohan wouldn't have gotten the rage boost needed Gohan wouldn't have gotten the rage boost so that way Goku could sense his ki. But also, we've seen the movie of Resurrection F, so we've seen a world where Piccolo didn't die, and everyone was just able to build their ki up so Goku could sense it and go there. So that wasn't necessary either. It's a nice looking scene, it's a well orchestrated scene, but we know for a fact that it wasn't necessary within the context of that arc. So, Piccolo's sacrifice, meaningless. And then we get to this arc. The Universe 6 arc, or the Champa arc, whatever you want to call it. And he jobs the Frost. And honestly, this is what Piccolo... This is just kind of what Piccolo's character is. He's there to show up, do some cool shit, and go. And people want to say, like, I don't believe he's Toriyama's favorite character. Toriyama treats his favorite character better than that. I think Toriyama treats his favorite character fairly damn well. He developed a series where the Saiyans are just the omnipotent characters of the franchise. They have ridiculous god abilities, they have multiple transformations that exponentially increase their power, and they just keep getting bigger and better. And Piccolo, he keeps up fairly well. You toss him like a couple of fusions, and that gave him some good bumps, but then every other huge power increase, he just gets massive gains for really no reason. He goes from a power level of under 400 to a power level over 3,000 just by training by himself, by meditating and, sparring with Gohan a little bit. And he increases his power over 6 times. That's insane. In under a year. So, and most of that was him kind of babysitting Gohan and meditating until Gohan got his shit together. So he was really only sparring with Gohan for about 6 months. And he gets these huge, massive gains, where everyone else is training with God and Popo. They're way weaker, they're way lower on the totem pole. Piccolo trains by himself, and it just passes everybody. Except for Goku, obviously. And Goku had to fucking train under 10 times gravity to, get the gains that he did. And the Kaioken, obviously. So, and then you look at, he meditates on Kaio's planet for 6 days-ish. Shows up on Namek, and Nail's just like, oh, you're really powerful. I'm like, really? How is he really powerful? Like, the fact that Nail is impressed by his power would imply that he is somewhere in the same ballpark as Nail. Maybe a little lower, maybe a little higher, but he's in that ballpark. And how? He's been dead this entire time, and he spent 6 days just kind of chilling on Kyle's planet meditating. But apparently he's, almost Nail level. Like, he's impressive to Nail. That says a lot about his character right there. He trains with Goku for 3 years, and Goku's got this 50 times multiplier, but yet somehow he's still able to, like, hold his own against 20. And you would assume 20 would be stronger than 19. And 19 was putting up a decent fight against Vegeta. He wasn't getting completely raffle-stomped. So, you would assume 20 would be stronger, but then, yeah, but he's still able to hold his own. Like, he cuts his arm off, and 20 has to run away. he's always kept up, is what I'm trying to say. And now, he trained for like 8 months roughly with Gohan, just sparring during Gohan's free time, and he's been meditating for 3 days. And in that time frame, he went from being weaker than an SS1 Gohan, apparently, to close to Goku's base. That's insane. That is an insane leap in power. Like Piccolo at this point should be able to go toe-to-toe with SS3 Goku from the end of Z. Or not the end of Z, but the Buu fights of Z. So yeah, Piccolo, I think, he gets treated fairly damn well. Everything considered, Toriyama gives him cool shit to do. He always tries to keep him in the mix. I have no problem with Piccolo's role in the franchise as of right now. Like, he's not really, like I said, he's not relevant, but he still gets to do cool shit, and that's Piccolo's character. He's fucking cool. He does cool shit. He's never gonna be the big headline guy. He's never gonna be meaningful or impactful to the story. That's never been his character. As I said, the last really meaningful thing he did was die against Nappa. And actually, that's not true. There is 2 occasions post the Nappa fight that he was relevant in. And people aren't going to like it. In Dragon Ball GT, he sacrifices himself to get rid of the Black Star Dragon Balls. No more Black Star Dragon Balls. People can't use them. Also, no more Black Star Dragon Balls. The Earth isn't going to blow up a second time from Baby making his wish. He played a role there. He did something meaningful. He impacted the story, so that situation could never happen again. And he sacrificed himself for that. That was a completely selfless act on Piccolo's part. For the good of all of humanity, for the good of the world, a character who went from trying to, take it over has now sacrificed his life for it. That's meaningful. That was relevant. That was important. Also, in the Super 17 arc, he does that thing with Dende to open up the portal to have like a Goku out. Not as poignant or interesting, but it's still something something he did that was relevant. It got Goku out of hell. It did. So that was also relevant. Because regardless of what people want to believe, Goku cannot use instantaneous movement to get out of hell. He just cannot. Stop saying that. He didn't do it at the end of the series. It's part of the ambiguous nature of that ending. Go fuck yourself. But other than that, though, yeah. The most meaningful Piccolo has been since the Nappa fight is GT. I'm not saying that GT is like some, it's like, I use this as like crazy, be like, yeah, GT's so cool. But no, GT does some cool shit there. And, those were great Piccolo moments. And that's Piccolo. He's full of great moments. He's a great character. He's totally badass. He's just not a headliner. And that's fine. He doesn't need to be. And people just need to stop expecting him to be. So yeah. That's all I have to say. I think that wraps up everything. Till next time, guys. Zeon, out.